You're doing.
Today is Wednesday, September 14th, and we're talking to Leonard and Adele Prouhet. Is that how you pronounce your name? Prouhet?
Correct.
And would you spell that for us?
That's Prouhet.
Where did that name origin come from?
It came from Alsace-Lorraine. That's where our...
Switzerland? Switzerland?
No, that's not Switzerland. That's a little country in between France and Germany that's half German and half France. But we understand that there was always some fighting going on there.
So
to
what
speak.
do your grandparents claim that they were? Would they call themselves,
Well, they were farmers.
I mean, German or?
Oh, no, this is French. This is French.
Okay.
Mhm. It was pronounced Prouhet, I think, when they came over here, and then the pronunciation would change, like a lot of names, to Prouhet.
Mr. Leonard Prouhet, would you mind telling us when you were born?
I was born December 16th, 1930.
And where were you born?
I was born in a hospital in St. Louis.
In the city of St. Louis?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And your wife, Adele, would you care if I asked you when you were born?
October 23rd, 1931.
And where were you born, may I
I was
ask?
born at home. We lived on House Ferry Road, and that's between Blackjack and Moline Acres, in that area there. Well, in fact, on top of the hill where it used to be 66 and now it's 270 goes through, so it's right on top of the hill there.
Okay,
It
so
was behind where it used to be Ackerman Buick that they just eventually tore down a while back. It was right behind Ackerman Buick. That was right on the Rock Road and New Halls Ferry. Not the Rock Road, 270 and New Halls Ferry.
In 1951, there wasn't much in the way of new housing construction out there yet either. Was
No, it was all farmland.
all farms.
were your parents
Truck
farmers?
Yeah. Mhm.
And Leonard, what about your parents? What did they do?
It was fruit and vegetables farming. The farmers that came over from Alsace-Lorraine, it was one family of mother and father and 5 children. And as far as we know, it was the only Prouhets that ever came over from that we have ever run across. So all the Prouhets that you run across in this country come from that one family.
And would this be your great-grandparents or grandparents?
No, it'd be great, somewhere
Wow.
in there.
Okay,
1831 when they came over.
I see.
So
Well,
there's a Prouhet Drive or something in Overland, so
We're related.
that person is connected.
We're all
to-
related.
When you were born and growing up, where did you live?
Down the street here, a few hundred feet.
On
The
Taussig?
house is still there. Dad built it the year I was born. He farmed with his dad, was born there, and it would be on top of the hill. When you go down this road right around the corner here, across the railroad track, that was Grandpa's farm on the left.
Oh, I see.
And Dad was born and raised right there. And he bought this ground down here, presumably, I don't know specifically, the year before I was born. Then he built on it the year I was born, 1930.
Is that big
And
house is still occupied?
That house is gone on top of the hill, Grandpa and Grandma's. The one that I was, what Dad built when I was born is still there.
Is that the one with the porch?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a porch across the front.
Okay.
Well, that's it.
Did you have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, I'll name them. Bill was the oldest, Ray was next, and then come me, and then Jenny, my only sister, married to Lawrence Ritter. They have the Ritter greenhouses. And then my brother Eddie. There was 5 of us.
I see.
And the first 3, Bill and Ray and I, we only got 8th grade education.
Where was your education?
A little school about a half mile down the road called Bonfield School.
Bonfield School was it on Taussig?
Yes, it was. Mm-hmm.
Was
And it's
Taussig
a-
called Taussig at that point?
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. But in front of us here was called Gist. It was Gist coming from Fifi Road on down this way, made a sharp left turn right at the corner of Bill's house, and ended at the railroad down here, where the railroad
It
was
was
over.
It was a
Then they
level
changed
crossing.
this to Taussig when they did, when did they change that to Taussig? Was it when they
They
did all this in here?
370,
Yeah.
370.
So they changed that part to Taussig from the railroad right to the interchange here.
Was that railroad a level crossing back there? And
No, it was always
been
over
out?
the top
Okay.
of the road
Okay.
there.
'Cause they were trying to
Taussig.
make a slight grade going to the St. Charles Bridge, I guess.
Well, Taussig used to be in a different, there was more to Taussig than what there is now.
Uh-huh.
When you go underneath the railroad, and then you made a sharp left, you go right up into the schoolyard, very short distance. Taussig used to go on down, and when they put the railroad here in 1935, or rather they changed the route of the railroad in 1935, Taussig used to go down, and then that was part of what is now Pruitt Farm Road in front of
Okay.
our farm down there. And they cut that off when they changed the railroad there.
What about the name Taussig? Is that named for another local family?
That come from a doctor, I think I'm right on that, Dr. Taussig, and I run across his name in something, but I know there's a lot more history, somebody's got it.
I think he had something to do with the railroad itself.
I didn't know if it did, I didn't hear that anytime.
So you went to a school called Bonfil School. Was that considered a Bridgeton school or a Pattonville school or?
In those days, now that's the same school that my dad went to. I'm thinking that I heard him say that it was a one-room schoolhouse when he went to it. It was 2 rooms when we went to it. And it got bigger. They made 2 rooms out of it. And I went to 1 year to St. Mary's Catholic School, the 7th grade. Ray was in the 8th grade that year. They started a bus service. All it was the priest from the parish there drove a, I guess you'd call it a large car. All you get was 5 or 6 kids in there, and that was the school bus.
Yeah.
And then they had to drop it the year after that. So I went my 8th year back down to Cabon Fields. And the only reason that we got to 8th grade, first 3 of us, was because Dad kept us home to work. Things were just so tough and so hard that he needed us at home to work, and he kept us out of school quite a bit in those later years of the 8th grades.
And this wasn't uncommon, was it?
No,
At
not
that
in those
time.
days.
No, I mean that wasn't considered at all uncommon. That
No, there were other families did the same thing quite a bit. The only difference is that the type of work that my parents was doing and my grandparents was very labor intensive, and therefore the kids had to stay home more and work.
so basically, you worked here with your family
Right.
to support the family business, which was farming.
It was fruit and vegetables.
Where did you sell these fruits and vegetables?
There was what you would call, over in Robertson, a commission hauler. You could take the stuff to him, your produce. He would take it down to St. Louis to what is called a commission house, and he would sell it directly to stores and whoever could make use of it.
So he gave you a price for your load
Yes.
of whatever you had. And can you give us a few items that you did raise? What vegetables or did you sell?
There was tomatoes and peppers, sweet corn, in the line of vegetables, sweet potatoes, Irish potatoes. Then in the line of fruit, when Dad first moved down here, he had to plant a new orchard Grandpa's orchard was well established from when Grandpa started his farm. And so he followed in the same vein of orchard, of grapes and berries as far as the fruits. And so another item that Dad planted that came in a lot sooner, which we worked in so much, was asparagus. In 1 year, you don't cut the asparagus, but from the second year on, then you can cut every year. You don't have to replant every year. So the old familiar saying that I've mentioned quite a few times when we talk about asparagus is, us kids, the three of us, we had to cut asparagus before we went to school. We cut asparagus when we come home from school, and we even cut asparagus in our sleep.
My goodness, well, how much asparagus was there?
At one time, Dad had close to like 8 to 10 acres.
Oh my
Wow.
That's
God.
all. Every little spear had to be cut with a fork knife like this.
Oh, that must have been very tedious.
And then there was no refrigeration in those days. It was put in, you made bunches, and then we even, you cut the butts off. See, when you cut, it's always a slanty cut like. And so you want to even them up, look nice for the store. So you want to get them all about the same length. Normally asparagus would be about like that. When you go out to cut, if they were a little shorter, you cut a little deeper, so you get a length on a certain length. And I think I'm the one that thought up this invention for cutting them all even. I made a board, and I put an end on this way, sticking up, I guess, so you put the tips against it without crushing it. And then put another board across like this here on the bottom side, and put it over a bucket or a box or something. And then you would, the bottom was a board, and then you could cut them all the same length. And I don't think I got that anymore, but I remember we really used that one after we made it.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Well, I didn't invent very many things, but I remember that one.
Well, let me ask Adele, where did you go to school?
At Holy Cross Church and school in Baden. That was a pretty good trip for us. It was about 6 miles.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did your mother drive you to school?
No, my dad did. And then when he was on the market too long or something, then my aunt would drive. Otherwise, she didn't drive that much, but she drove us to school.
Well, did you have any brothers or sisters?
Yeah, there was 8 of us in the family.
Wow. What was your maiden name?
Happy, H-A-P-P-E.
Yes.
Is that German?
Yes.
Papa, I guess, or Papa?
What's that?
How was that pronounced originally?
They said Hoppy before.
Hoppy?
And then nowadays they H-A, so it's Happy.
Uh-huh.
I have a little thing about that when we get to talking about her name being Happy.
Uh-huh.
I tell everybody, well, she was even happy before she married me.
That's cute. Well, speaking of marrying you, Leonard, how did you two find each other if you lived north and Leonard lived here, you know, at the close to the river actually? So how did you two
Well, it's
meet?
approximately 12 miles. I made many trips back and forth, and I clocked it from our house to her house. But
well, she wanted to know how
yeah.
I met you.
Anyway, we worked pretty hard here, and we didn't have time for recreation like a lot of our school kids, chums, and neighbors and that. Some of them had vacation and that. Well, for somehow or another, Mom and Dad always went to dances. They loved to dance. And I guess that you know, we kind of took that up. And so Mom kind of taught us a few steps, and we went to some local things like I remember my grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary. And I remember the first time I asked a girl to dance when I was 14, and I was as stiff as a board. But we learned to dance, and in fact, the friend is a neighbor of ours now, Bob Marshall. We were all single then, and he said, well, I heard there's a dance over in Blackjack. And we didn't know where Blackjack was.
Right, what is a blackjack?
Anyway,
Right.
so we all got together, we went over there.
And
here,
who had a car? tell us what kind of transportation?
We used Mom and Dad's car when we first started going out, and at that time I was about probably either 17 or 18 when I started going out to some dances. And
they didn't mind if you took the car out at night across town?
My brother was the one that did the driving
Okay.
mostly, and a little later, then I did some of the driving. But at the dances, there's so many people having such a good time, and when they were doing the polkas and the waltzes, that's what was the music pretty much in those days, and also circle dances. That really mixed the crowd up, and looked like it was so much fun. We said, well, we got to learn how to dance the way those people are dancing. It really we didn't do much dancing up till that time at all. So we learned to dance, and we went to dances every Saturday night from there on. And so eventually, Adele lived close to Blackjack, and I saw her at one of the dances there. And it happened to be every year we had a vegetable growers picnic in Blackjack, and all the people that raise vegetables and belong to the Vegetable Growers Association would be there, and then everybody else too. And that was one of the bigger things in the year. That's when I saw Adele I guess that would have been 1955, and I saw her there, but I didn't get to meet her that night. Actually, that was an afternoon and night. There was a picnic and a dance at night. And I didn't get to meet her until the next January.
Oh my goodness, so how many months was that then?
Well, from August, the picnic was always in August, and then in January. But she never really got to go anywhere all her life. And in the meantime, from August till January, your dad died in September, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So her dad died. I never got to meet him. I never got to meet my father-in-law.
How old were you then when your father died?
Oh, I don't know.
25.
25?
Or was it 26? 25. 25.
This was before you got married,
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and you were 25?
We didn't get married till we was 27, me and him.
We were
I was
27.
27 in October, and
Oh.
he was 27, and he wouldn't be 28 till December. So we were pretty much the same age.
Okay, all righty. So you had seen her, but you didn't really have a chance to formally introduce.
No. So
Well,
I
what
had.
it was, my brother, by that time, I'm one of the older ones. My brothers were smaller. So we didn't get to go out because we didn't have a car or nothing. And then when my brothers, they got old enough to go out with some of their friends, and my brother said, why don't you come along too? And I didn't want to, but that's how, he said, come on, so we went on up there, but we didn't know how to dance. And we was outside waiting for the boys, you know how that goes. And it was getting chilly. So we went in the hall and sat down and where the dance was. And that's how come he was seeing me, but he didn't say nothing.
All right, so that brings us all the way up to January. And then how did you two actually?
Well, a friend of mine that had met Adele, I told him, before I met her, I said, when you get a chance, you introduce me to her. So he did that night. And the next day I was up to her house to see her.
Wow, you got her address. These days, everybody gets a cell phone number or whatever.
Yeah.
But in those days, I guess you were good to get an address,
Yeah,
right?
we didn't even have a phone.
You didn't have a phone.
They didn't even have electric.
Oh my.
No electric.
Oh my.
That's how rural it was, and it was, of course, it was very poor circumstances that they lived in.
How did you get back and
children.
forth to Holy Cross every day?
Pardon?
How did you get back and forth to Holy Cross School? I
Uh,
know that's all Halls
just
Ferry
with
Road.
the car, my dad drove back and
Oh,
forth.
your dad drove you there.
That's why,
Did he work near the school?
no, he farmed,
Uh-huh.
yeah. But then if
So he had to make
dropped us off-
two round trips
Yeah.
a day? Wow.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and that's why somebody asked me the other day, how come you have so much patience? Because I didn't know pusher, and I said, well, I was used to waiting my whole life, because when we had school, and see, we didn't have a phone, and it's different nowadays, so everybody calls if the school's gonna be off or something. If it was too hot or something, they closed the school down or whatever. So we still had to wait till 3 o'clock when my dad come to pick us
Oh,
up. So I'm used
uh-huh.
to waiting all my life.
Uh-huh.
And,
Now, did you actually graduate from,
yeah.
was it Holy Cross? Was that the high school?
Oh, no, grade school. I only went to 8th grade.
Oh, okay, so you didn't continue in high school?
No,
And what did you do during that time then, in your teenage years?
at home, worked at home in the fields.
I see.
I'd rather do that anyway than go to school.
So was Father Hellriegel your pastor?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
And we went to the neighboring school, Mount Carmel.
Oh, you did?
Oh,
I'll be.
we got married by Monsignor Hellriegel.
Well, speaking of getting married, how long did it take after you formally met in January and you went out to really see her, and then when did you get married?
Well, we went out for approximately a year, and I asked her to marry me on Thanksgiving. And as soon as she said yes, by the way.
Okay, that's nice. The first time she said yes.
And then Ray, the brother between Bill and I, is a carpenter, very good carpenter. And so right away we started, as soon as we were engaged, we started making plans to build our house. And Dad gave us this lot right here that we're on, and this is the house that with Ray and Dad, Brother Bill, and with neighbors, and we built our home.
How long did it take you to build this house?
It took us, well, it's not done yet.
A work in progress?
No, I guess it's as done as it's going to ever be. But it took us over a year. We still didn't have it completed when we got married, but it was done enough to move in.
Where were you married?
We got married at Holy Cross Parish, a church in Baden, at Adele's parish church. And I had to get permission from our parish priest to be married down at her church. Because normally you get married in the man's.
No, you get married in the ladies' church. The woman.
I'm sorry, you married at you.
Yeah, but why you had, they changed boundaries for church, and then that one time, then they said we belonged to St. Sebastian on Chambers Road, that would be our boundaries, and so we went there for a little bit, but then he asked if we could get married
Down
at Holy Cross,
That was
because we
it.
went there all the time,
Mhm.
When you got married, what kind of work were you doing? You said you were in your 20s. Actually, both of you were 27.
27 when we got married.
So, once you got married, Adele, then did you stop working for your family,
Yeah.
and now you were, what,
Yeah, over here for work.
established more or less here with your own,
Because actually the farm belonged to my grandpa where we lived on, and then he finally sold it, So about a year or so afterwards, he sold it. My brothers went out and got jobs before that, and so I worked almost 3 years down at St. John's Hospital.
Oh,
I was down in
really?
Euclid as a nurse's aide.
oh, okay,
I ain't got no education for nothing higher, but as an aide,
all right.
So that's what I did them a couple of years before we got married.
And how did you get there? Were you driving?
Yeah, they made me drive. But it's a little different, going down Kings Highway to that. And now when I go back there, I can't find out which way I went to work, From Hall Square, I guess it was West Florissant or something I took, and then Bircher, and then somewhere.
Mm.
But it all looks different today. I can't,
And that's so true, I think, of so many neighborhoods that we grew up in. It's changed.
Yeah.
And that's one reason why it's important for us to talk now and get your, experiences on tape, because 20 years from now, this will probably be changed. In fact, was it last winter that they improved Tossig Road?
Yeah.
They
Well,
took
they
out
finished it,
that,
yeah. It took them 2 years.
They
Oh,
took out that kind of nasty curve up there by the fire station,
Yeah.
right? So now let me ask you, so when you married and you had this house built by your family, Leonard's family, and what was it like? Because looking right across the street from you now, what is across the street from you right now?
Well,
Car
it's,
lot.
they're actually automobile wrecks, where they're in accidents.
But McNulty used to live down there, it was farming.
Well,
when we
at
first
that
got
time,
married.
a farmer by the name of Richard and Lou McNulty had 3 daughters. They lived down there. And his family, I think, a few generations back, owned, not that where he bought down there, but this used to be part of McNulty Farm, and the house was on top of the hill on the other side of the railroad. But Richard McNulty was our neighbor there until he sold out.
Do you remember what his daughters' names are?
Yes, the oldest one was Patsy. She married a Joe Remiger over Spanish Lake. They truck farmed all their life. And let's see, the other 2 is Adele, help me out here.
Has to be a Kathleen in there somewhere.
Well, that was,
That's a different one.
Yeah,
that was Art McNulty's.
that was
I
Richard's
thought that name
brother's
sounded
daughter.
familiar. Okay, I thought the name sounded familiar.
Yeah, Rita was
Bart,
the youngest
one
one.
that married Rich Barclay.
That was,
That's all right. If you
I know
don't
her name.
remember. But these
She
were
went to school with you.
relatives of Kathleen Telcher.
Yes. Mhm.
I thought that name sounded familiar, that her maiden name.
Yeah, Richard was the youngest out of that family.
Okay, so sitting here looking out your front window, you would have seen McNulty's farm or
Mhm.
place. And now, looking out your window, you're seeing basically a
It's called,
auto.
it's called Copart, and it's a national thing. They have at least one in every state, and they bring in the automobiles that were in accidents, burnt, whatever. Then they resell them to anybody that can make use of them. I think not to individuals, but just to garages
Oh,
and
really?
like companies
Oh.
that will deal in that.
And then down the street, we have, a little farther, we have the Bridgeton Municipal Athletic Field.
Mhm.
Now, what was that area like when you were growing up?
That was all farmland. The park bought I think it was 28 acres to start out with, which borders on the south, Ferguson Lane, and bought that from Evelyn Abishon's father. Actually, Evelyn Marshall. Her maiden name is Abishon. And he owned that land there, and they bought that from him. Put in that 28-acre park. Then there was 40 acres next to it owned by, the last name was Schrader, Tony Schrader, and his wife, Frida. And they bought that 40 acres next. So that's all of what BMAC is on now. And that was mostly grain farm. I believe that in the first few years they raised some horseradish, but it was grain farm.
And you said your family has a business in this area, correct?
Well, what's left of our vegetable farm in the bottom. See, when Dad sold, we didn't get to that yet. This was 25 acres that Dad raised his family on, and at one time he owned 17 acres across the street here with just a big mountain. And that mountain's gone. Somebody bought that after Dad sold it, sold all the dirt off. Now there's a hole there actually, and the other side of that is 370.
Yes.
From Gistor to 370.
Yes, and right now we have that great big Mills
The Mills Mall.
mall, kind of catty corner from
Yes.
that.
Mhm.
Okay, just to kind of place it for people. Okay.
Anyway, Dad had 25 acres here, and that's what we were raised on. And then that 17, which he sold, which was really a mountain, a few acres of a creek bottom. And when Dad sold that about 45 years ago, just when they first put the first water line through on Taussig, when it was Gist then, and they just put that through, and then some real estate guy come by and he decided to sell it. He always wanted to get do some grain farming because this was really hard work, and he has had some health problems all his life too. So he sold it, but Bill and I that stayed with him decided, well, we're going to just we like to work out in the open. I don't have the education for anything else, even though the teachers at Bonfield School told Mom and Dad, you make sure and send Bill further to school. He's very, he will go far. But he decided to stay home. And I decided to. Bill was 2 years and 9 months older than me. But anyway, Dad sold this ground here, but long before that, about 1942, I think it was, somewhere in that area, Dad bought 50 acres in the bottoms, and that was directly below Richard McNulty's farm. The old Taussig Road run between it, which is now Pruitt Farm Road. So Dad bought 50 acres from my Uncle Lawrence Tizon that lived down in the bottoms north of here. And all level ground, but flooded. It was flooded by the creek that runs through the original place here. It comes all the way through Bridgeton up here, drains a lot of Bridgeton. That creek flooded for years down there, and after Dad bought that, him and the neighbors all gradually levied the creek to try to keep it from flooding the land. And we still get floods when it's really terrible hard rains. And then it floods from the river, and we also did the same thing with the river. All of the landowners, they levied the river to try to keep it from coming out so regular, which it did in the 40s and 50s a lot. So that helped a lot. We haven't had near the floods that we used to, but when it did get us, it took everything that we had down there. So we didn't know what to do, and Dad sold this. We started down in the bottom, and brother-in-law and sister Jenny and Larry Ritter that have the greenhouses now, they bought part of Richard McNulty's farm, 10 acres, which was right next to that 50 acres. And so he started raising vegetables and started his greenhouse business. So we went down and we were right next to him, and we worked together quite a bit. And so that's where our vegetable farm was after Dad sold this. But we did get wiped out by the river at different times.
When it floods, you'll have to bear with me for asking this because I'm not really an agricultural student. When a river comes and floods, does it enrich the land or does it take the top rich land with it?
It depends where you're at according to the current of the river. We're on the back side where you don't get much current. It's more quiet water that comes to find it level. When you get down closer to the river, it can do damage. Sometimes it takes dirt away, sometimes it piles a lot of sand on. And one of the bad floods in the 50s, the neighbor down there, Jack Musterman, and some of the others, where it come around the end of the railroad, which cut the flow of the water, and all the current was right at the end of the railroad. It cut a place out there and made some deep holes, and it also put that sand up on another place. They had deposited somewhere, and they took big bulldozers and 5-foot plows to try to plow that sand back under and get the better topsoil up on top. And I can remember that. That was in the early 50s. So if you do get damage, but we didn't get damage, only the water is all that we got, which would kill everything.
That was bad enough.
And now, have you had any flooding? I think I've noticed in driving by here on my way back and forth to the mill small, that there have been recent spring where we've had a lot of rain.
You know, this past year was bad. We're very fortunate that the river didn't come out, It stayed high and it's starting to drop some now. It's down to around 20 feet and it stayed around 25. Right after flood stayed a little above all year until this point.
That was rainwater you seen, I guess, right?
It, what you
You said
saw
what you
down
seen
here
as
was
rainwater.
all surface water and it flooded a lot down here, more than we'd ever seen from just the surface water. And that's the water that comes from the hill, from this creek, which did break out down here by the farm. A lot of water went up Pruitt Farm Road and then went down Ferguson Lane and then come in over what levee is there into those fields down there. That's what you saw.
Do you still have involvement with the fruits and vegetables?
Not that well. We retired from the vegetable farm about, I guess, 14 years ago now.
It was about 14.
Mhm. And we still own some of the land that my brother died a year ago in July, was it?
June.
June. The two of us that stayed on the farm, and that went to his son. They had one son and two daughters. And so he operates the farm now. And has, Bill operated it with him up until he died.
You know, I didn't get a chance to ask you about if you had children.
We have 4 boys.
You have 4 boys, and what are their names?
Joe, he's the oldest. Paul. And we had twins, Leonard and Lawrence. And Leonard, the one that got killed about
2000.
the year 2000. Automobile accident. He
Oh.
wasn't driving, but he got killed. And then Bill, we raised Bill's daughter because his wife died when she was only a year old, and she was sick for a year. So we took her little one in when she was 5 months old. So she called us Mom and Dad.
That was Jennifer.
Jennifer, yeah.
And the other daughter of Bill's is Perea. And she married Rich Hahn. And that's a relative of the Hahn families here.
Yeah, we
There.
interviewed Jerry Hahn with his mother. Well, when we first started videotaping,
Oh, yeah.
we interviewed them. And so you had 4 boys.
4 boys.
Mm-hmm. Do any of them live here in Bridgeton or around here?
Lawrence, the one of the twins, he lives on, what's in Hazelwood, Missouri Bottom Road. And Joe lives in Josephville, that's in Wentzville. And then Paul lives in Warrington.
Oh, wow.
And Jennifer lives in Eolia.
And grandchildren?
We got 11.
11.
11. Yeah.
I mentioned that 2 of our 4 sons decided they would try to make a living on the farm with us. So we formed a partnership. Now Bill's one boy, he always loved the farming too. So we formed a 5-way partnership. Bill and I, and Bill's son Billy, and then our sons Joe and Lawrence. And so we did that for quite a few years, and finally some things come up, and we dissolved the farm partnership. That's when we retired.
Mm-hmm.
It was time for us to retire.
I see. Sure. Sure. Well, since you've been retired, what type of activities do you do?
Well, being raised on the farm and loving it all the way through, well, loving most of it, I couldn't do without my garden.
Vegetable or flowers or what?
Oh, vegetables for me, flowers for Adele.
Well, yeah, I don't.
So, Dad gave us almost an acre here when we got married. And the back part was real sloping, used to be orchard. In fact, where we are right here was part of the asparagus patch when we built. We dug out all those, plowed them over and dug out all those roots. You don't know what asparagus looks like, do you? It makes a lot of roots underneath the ground and a lump like this and ties the dirt in. We didn't want to lose any dirt. We had to shake all that dirt out, and so we get rid of the plants. And then that's mostly what our lawn is. And right about the back of the house is where the orchard went from there down on the rougher land. And when we first built, we saved the trees, went around them. We had peaches in our backyard.
That's nice.
And
Now he's got everything, tomatoes and beans and peppers and grapes, which, of course, the animals are eating the grapes.
Let's talk about the animals. Who do you see around in the area now? Do you see any animals in this area?
Squirrels, groundhogs,
Raccoons,
raccoons.
possums, rabbits, deer,
Do you ever see any wild turkeys?
yes. They
Because
used
in
to-
our area, there was a wild turkey that used to walk around like
Oh,
eating the
really?
place.
Yeah.
Several years ago.
There, some years back, when they put the interchange in here, there used to be a flock of them. Loved that bank just as you go across, going up Missouri Bottom Road on the other side of the interchange. For a couple of years, why we saw them there, and finally, I guess it got too crowded for them or something. But we still see a turkey now and then because this wooded area over here, what used to be that 17 acres that Dad owned, and the rest of that property that a lawyer bought, and he's the one that sold the dirt off the hill. So there's a lot of woods right in that area, and that's where the few turkeys that are left stay, and also the deer.
Mm-hmm.
But the animals are building up. There used to be a business in fur, which Brother Bill used to, he made a second business out of it for years. But that is, hardly nobody wants the fur coats anymore. That's gone out. They used to send a lot of the furs over to Russia where it was so cold, and where they used to use them, and they still do over there, I believe.
Sure. What other changes can you tell us about this area that you lived in? You know, we've talked to people now in interviewing, and some of the people have lived mostly up on Old St. Charles Road. Some of the people we've talked to have lived a lot down there by St. Mary's Church. So we get people that sometimes have just mostly, confined to a certain area of Bridgeton. And it seems that you have been mostly here, correct?
We spent our life here.
What can you tell us about, I'm assuming that you observed when they put in Highway 70 over to St. Charles? The bridge?
I was here, I'm sure. Can you pick
mean-
out a date when that was put in there?
I don't know if it was 1950s maybe, I'm not
Middle
sure.
middle 50s, but
Mhm.
you probably noticed the drop in traffic on the Rock Road. That would be the main effect.
Yeah, see, I can even remember before the Rock Road was in there.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a small kid, Tossick Road used to go all the way back to past what was the quarry. Now it's the landfill, waste management, or whoever owns it. And I can remember traveling that road with Mom and Dad as a little kid, and it run into, but didn't cross, St. Charles Rock Road, which was right below
Yeah.
Banker's place
Yeah,
there.
you can still see that road from
Yes,
satellite
it still
photographs.
goes down.
Yeah.
There's a garage down at the below Bankers there, which we made use of for our when we needed mechanical work done. And so I remember when the Rock Road, when there was no St. Charles Rock Road
Yeah,
there.
which is
that
called
far
Old
anyway.
Highway 40.
Mhm.
Do you ever remember a time when the main traffic was carried on two different roadbeds? Oh, one going towards St. Charles and one coming towards St. Louis?
That would have been St. Charles Rock Road.
Yeah. The Rock Road and the Old Rock Road they were used simultaneously to carry opposite going traffic.
I can't say that I recall that.
Okay. Do you remember when the Bayou Bell was moved?
Yes.
I remember.
Do you remember seeing any of that?
Yeah, I do. I was in the hospital waiting for one of the boys, Paul, middle one, to be born.
Uh-huh.
And
We had a catbird seat that.
yeah, look out the window and you could see it coming down
Uh-huh.
the river. And in
Now
the
there's
park
something
right
you don't see every day.
there. No. So I guess I was privy to see that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And how many years was that?
Well, he's let's see, he was born on my birthday, and I'm going to be 80, so he's going to be 50 this year, and 50 years ago in October.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Jenny and I went on a date there. That was on our second date to
Oh,
the
really?
restaurant. Yeah, I never saw it when it was in motion.
Yeah. I
She
see
did.
it coming down. Yeah, the nun was in there with me, and one of the nuns that used to be, they was over in St. Joseph Hospital.
Uh-huh.
And anyway, somehow she come in to visit me, and then we both seen it coming down the river. In fact, that was my great aunt.
Mhm.
She's a St. Mary's nun. Of course, she's dead now. But I don't know why she was at St. Charles, because most of the time she was at St. Mary's, and
Maybe she knew you were there and
Could
came to
be.
visit you.
yeah.
Did you go over to St. Charles very much? Since you're living here so close to the river, would you go over to St. Charles?
Quite a bit.
Well, shopping or something.
At times after we got married, we would even go to Mass at St. Peter's or at St. Charles Borromeo for an earlier Mass on Sunday. And but mostly we went to our parish church.
Which was your parish church?
Well, it started out as St. Mary's. By the way, I looked at Bridgeton's historical book we talked about, and there's a picture of old St. Mary's in there just as I remember it as a kid. Then they tore that down and they built a gymnasium, and they were going to make that into a church, but it just stayed a gymnasium was the church. They were going to make that into the gymnasium and build a new church. Never did get to it. That went out with the airport. And but before that, then they built St. Lawrence Martyr up here on is that DuPage? And so we went there until the airport took that out. And then we went over to Our Lady of Mercy, and then with the consolidation, then we went to St. Martin de Porres. That's where we're at now.
What about your children, your boys? Where did they go to school?
St. Lawrence de Martyr.
And where did they go for high school then?
They went to Aquinas, but Joe, somehow or another with the bus thing, and he was a little older. He didn't, after 16, I think he didn't have to go to high school at that time. So then he dropped out the farm. And then Paul and Lawrence and Leonard, they went to Aquinas. And then, then Lawrence dropped out and he went to the farm. And then Paul and Leonard, they went to North County Tech. And that's where they graduated from. Leonard was a machinist, and Paul was mechanic.
Very handy occupations.
They all got most of their education on the farm. Whenever those that worked out, when they didn't have work, they come back to the farm for work. Not much money, but work anyway. And so they got enough to get by on.
We interviewed a man that was born and raised down there on the bottoms on Abishan, Mr. Don Kuhlman, and he said that they would have migrant workers come. Did your family ever employ migrant workers to help out?
Eventually, son Lawrence, one that took care of the help, and when it was getting harder to get help, it was due to him. He went ahead and hired some of the migrant workers, and but before that, we see as the children got older, we planted more crops, especially after the two decided to stay home. So Joe got married, so he had family to support, and so we expanded. We rented ground in the bottom besides our own land. For crop rotation and that. We raised some grain also, which helped. So we did use in the last years, and Billy still uses them, the migrant.
Where do
labor.
they, can you tell us a little bit about the migrant workers? Are you familiar with them?
To some degree, since I was there for a number of years.
Where did they stay when they would work for you?
For us, they had to have their own place to stay, which we couldn't supply a place for them. If they didn't have their own place and a way to get back and forth, we weren't able to use them. Where the larger places, they actually put up housing for the migrant workers.
So they didn't use campers or anything like that?
No.
Do you have other migrant workers that come now?
Billy does use migrant workers now.
Uh-huh.
And for the most part, what he uses, they go back to Mexico in the winter time, from what I understand, and then come back for the work during the planting and harvest season.
Do you know the family that owns the farming area down there in Creve Coeur, the Teese Farm? Are you familiar with
Oh,
them?
yes, very much so.
Are they also a Bridgeton or family or Maryland Heights?
They originated, and they still have the farm
That top,
on,
that top one is a VCR, and they was gonna do something with the bathroom, that, you know, to make me a walk-in tub because I have trouble, and they got it tore up, but they didn't get it done yet. So they took the TV out of the back room, and that's where I had the VCR, and I was gonna be smart and try to hook it up to here, but there's no place in the back to hook it up, because we got the box and then the VCR. So that's why the on top ain't working, but the DVD is.
you know you're on film.
Oh, right. Is it?
I'll get back to your
Right, we
question.
were talking about the Teese Farm because I have
I'm sorry.
taken my
Sorry.
grandchildren over there several years for their big pumpkin time and so forth, and I just wondered if you knew of that family.
Oh, yes. All of the vegetable growers, and that includes fruit also, but there's not much fruit in this part of the country anymore. And there's very little vegetable growers. They're pretty much by themselves as for that kind of operation, that big operation. We've known them all our life. And their original farm was where they have the one stand, which is on Hanley Road, right off of 70.
Right, by the Metrolink station.
Yes, and that's where I think their grandfather started out. And then they, since they wanted to expand, well, then they started down in the Creve Coeur bottom there. And then there was another. There was quite a few other farmers that are gone today, like William Spittle, a great vegetable grower, and it was really up on things. We bought his corn sprayer when we were expanding, and when he sold out.
Doesn't he have a tree farm? Or some
They
type
bought
of a
his
nursery?
name. The people that bought some of his property acquired his name to use.
Well, we only have a few more minutes for our interview time.
About 8.
But we'd like you to just close your eyes and think about what changes have come around and, you know, possibly just what you would like to tell future generations about this area, about Bridgeton, about anything that comes in mind for you. Have you, you know, taken part in the Bridgeton Community Center services? Lot offered there, a lot of day trips for seniors. Do you do anything like that?
You never did take any of them.
Well, they offer a lot of different
I know, yeah,
outings
they
for
do,
seniors.
yeah.
You might, you know, might think about that and join the group to go somewhere. They go eagle watching, I know, and
And they go a lot
casino.
of places, I noticed in their book that we
Yes.
get, leaflet, yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Well, I would like to mention something that's the soil is something that we were raised on, and it's getting less and less of it, getting covered up with so many things, with expansion. And our family has a very deep feeling, talking about Bill and I, that stayed on the land and raised the crops all our life. And we've always shared such a deep feeling for soil. And there's a difference in soils. There are different types of soils, and some are more suited for one crop, one kind of crop than another. Like this bluff land along here, and most of the way around St. Louis, it runs out a little more all the time when you get south of us here. South County does not have the deep soil that we have here. The rock is closer to the surface. And we learned that as kids up, being if we stayed in one place. Bill and I only went from the house I talked about that Dad built when I was born to right here, Bill right next door and me here. That's as far as we got. And so our roots are really deep in this part of the country. And when Dad sold the place there, and we still had our old-time hotbeds in there, we didn't go to the greenhouse type that everybody uses today. there was these earth movers running around. Dad got to rent part of the ground back, and he kept the buildings and the house there. And Bill said, as much as he loves the soil, that it's going to take one of those things there, that's taking all this soil, moving it in different places, and getting it ready for factories or whatever, to get him off of the place before he'd ever move off the soil. I remember him saying that, and I pretty much agreed with him. But
This is
the
your
soil
brother
means
Bill.
so much to us, and it's something that God put here, we feel, for us. And we tried to make the best use of it that we could while we were on it. So,
We really appreciate you sharing that with us. I think that is really, really very special for you to say that, and we hope that people in the future will understand that. I think that I really don't know. I don't know if vegetable and you know, raising will come into, I should say, vogue again. You know what I think? I think things go in, you know, in vogue and popularity, and maybe what's in fashion to maybe raise your own vegetables. Maybe at another time people don't want to take their time to do
the
it.
necessity may have it come back some, which we're entering now. There are getting to be more people interested in a garden if they've got a spot, due to prices and scarce money in their pocket. I've talked to people that relate to this, what we're speaking about.
And just the
today.
pride of saying I grew this myself. What do you think of the senior garden that they have on Natural Bridge, that they let the Bridgeton seniors
I
use it?
visited there once and talked to a few of the people that did that, and of course I could relate with them very much.
They
I
enjoy
do-
that, having that?
I do have one thing that I would like to mention when we were talking about soil and how Bill and I love the soil so much. When 370 started to come in, the first plans, they were going to come right through this way, in this area here.
Whoa.
And I don't know how they ever figured that would be the best route. But before we ever said anything, they moved over to the area they are now. But before that, where it is now, Bill made a lot of protest and talked to them and that, and they said, well, they're going to miss the farm, which was our the bottom ground, which we went to from here, and there was 50 acres there that I remarked that Dad had bought from my Uncle Lawrence. So he fought with them for 2 years, and they said, okay, we're going to move it. But in the end, they moved it back over this way. They said, this is where it's going to have to go. It took about 4.5 or 5 acres off of the farm down there. So Bill fought like crazy to keep that highway from taking even an inch of the farm, but he lost that. But maybe he kept them from coming further in, possibly.
There is a house down there that you can see from 370. Whose house is that? Just kind of sitting there all by itself.
Oh, the big brick house with the flagpole.
Oh, that belonged to Jack Musterman's son, John. He gave him 3 acres to build there. That's the only new house in that whole bottom, as long as I can remember. And in 1993, no, it was, I think it was before, or was it 93? He kept the water from getting on the upper floor there by sandbagging and pumping. He sold it to landscapers, and landscapers own that, and they put up that flag.
Well, thank you so much for letting us come over today. It was a wonderful meeting you, and I've lived in Bridgeton for about 37 years. This is my first opportunity to meet you, so I really do appreciate your time.
Well, we appreciate you giving us the opportunity to do this. I wish we had another hour.
Okay, thanks a lot, folks.
Thank you.